I know it might not be entirely obvious to everyone. You might need to use your power of observation right now. You might notice that I am dressed up as Scooby-Doo right now. And yes, Scooby-Doo was my Halloween outfit. So I went to the Halloween parade this past week with my wife and my kids and my parents, and we had the mystery machine out. It was actually a Surrey, if you know what a Surrey is, and we actually took some time to pass out some candy to kids. And I have to tell you that Scooby-Doo amongst kids is still very popular. Sadly, we know that Scooby has become the subject of a lot of controversy. I am not going to talk about that. I'm not going to let them ruin Scooby-Doo for me. After all, we all know the old episodes of Scooby-Doo were the best. Anyhow, welcome to the Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng. I look very forward to this episode. I don't know that I'm going to wear this hood, at least, for the entire episode. It gets pretty warm wearing this outfit. You have no idea how bad I was sweating by the end of the Halloween parade. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, lots of fun, and I enjoyed being able to make a lot of kids happy. I accidentally made one child cry because his dad was pointing out that I was a giant doggy, so I leaned in to let him pet my head, and he did not want to pet my head. He thought I was a monster, and so he started crying, so I felt really bad about that. Aside from that, it was a lot of fun doing that. So what I want to actually talk about today, there's a couple of big topics, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about Donald Trump's campaign ad that was censored on Facebook. I'm going to talk about Ted Cruz on The View. But to start off, I am going to talk about this article that I found online this past week about scientists solve an origin of life mystery. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that's very fascinating to me because when you start off an article, particularly a scientific article, with the words scientists solve an origin of life mystery, well, I want to know what origin of life mystery that you have solved, so to speak. And I was very much disappointed by this article because it turns out that no origin of life mystery is solved, just more theories and hypotheses regarding, I believe it was phosphorus. It says seawater might have supplied the phosphorus required for emerging life. So you listen to how it's actually worded when you get inside of the article, where the headline is scientists solve an origin of life mystery, but then inside of the article itself it says seawater might have supplied the phosphorus required for emerging life. And so they ran their tests and all of that. I read the article. It was very confusing, and part of me wonders if it's intentionally confusing so that you don't know what they're talking about. It just seemed like a lot ado about nothing. And I've really learned to train my mind when I come across scientific articles like this, not to jump to conclusions right away. A lot of people do. They're like, whoa, I got to get right on with this because I want to be amongst the cool and smart crowd. Well, it's a lot less promising inside of there than what they make it out to be at the get-go. For instance, here's one of the quotes out of there. It says, "This could really change how we think about the environment in which life first originated," said Professor Nick Tosca from the University of Cambridge, who was one of the authors of the study. The research, which was headed by the University of Cambridge PhD student Matthew Brady, reveals that early seawater may, keyword, may have carried 1,000 to 10,000 times more phosphate than previously thought, provided the water contained a lot of iron. So are they making any conclusions at all? Yes, they're coming to conclusions, but any real, solid, tangible conclusions? Well, when you use the word may have, the words may have, that suggests that, well, they're not as convinced as what they make it sound by the headline in the article. So did they solve an origin of life mystery? The answer is no. And the word solve is it's a small word, but it's a big word to be using in relation to this topic. So this just is par for the course, though, for the scientific community. As I came across an article, by the way, this was from SciTech Daily, scitechdaily.com. If you want to find the article, and again, the name of the article is Scientists Solve an Origin of Life Mystery. So check it out yourself. Don't take my word for it. Read it yourself, and you can either be convinced or skeptical, as I am as a result. So the next thing I want to talk about is in relation to that scientific journals peer review are, hold on, let me pull up the article itself. So I found it on Answers in Genesis, but their source actually was a website called LifeSite. LifeSite was the name of the website. And it is about, let me get the headline for it. Says, follow the science, scientific journal publisher to retract hundreds of manipulated peer-reviewed papers. And then the sort of the subtext of that is, correcting the situation will not be easy, but a first step would be to institute criminal penalties for research and review fraud. Now, I, for a long time, have pointed out to people in Facebook debates and in other sorts of sort of informal debates that when it comes to scientific findings, and when I would debate these things, is particularly in relation to, am I allowed to say the word vaccines here? And I'm not talking about COVID, I'm just talking about vaccines in general. And when it comes to climate change and other politically charged topics, don't just take science's word on something. Just because they say a consensus of scientists means absolutely nothing. But you have to know, what are the financial interests? Who is it that is funding the research, and what are they trying to accomplish by this research, by funding it, and who's funding it? And as it relates to this article, it turns out that I was right on the money. How about that? What is it that I like to say? That my opinions are right 100% of the time. And that might just be my opinion, but my opinions are right 100% of the time. And that's how it turns out for this particular article. Let me try to read to you some of what they have to say. Let me get to the good part here. Now, some of these terms you might not be familiar with, so I'm going to have to explain what it is. Well, at the very beginning, it says, after months of investigation that identified networks of reviewers and editors manipulating the peer review process, Hindawi, which, by the way, is a publishing company, plans to retract 511 papers across 16 journals, Retraction Watch has learned. And so what we're seeing is that Hindawi has noticed that lots of these peer review articles that they have been publishing are fraudulent, that they have been put together in a very manipulative sort of way. Later on, down the article, well, let me say what Hindawi found. Hindawi's research integrity team found several signs of manipulated peer reviews for the affected papers, including reviews that contained duplicated text, a few individuals who did a lot of reviews, reviewers who turned in their reviews extremely quickly, and misuse of databases that publishers use to vet potential reviewers. You read down a little bit further, and we learn more from a group called Sage. Sage is a global publishing company. Sage announces the retraction of 60 articles implicated in a peer review and citation ring at the Journal of Vibration and Control. The full extent of the peer review ring has been uncovered following a 14-month Sage-led investigation and centers on the strongly suspected misconduct of Peter Chen, formerly of National Pingtung University of Education, Taiwan, NPUE, and possibly other authors at this institution. Okay, so what are we talking about here? There is massive corruption inside of the peer review process. So just because science says so, I mean, you remember how that was the big thing within these past couple years. Follow the science, follow the science. Science says so. Don't question science. Science is science. Science is true. You remember all those things that they told us? It turns out that science is not necessarily true, but is absolutely, as I have been proposing for quite some time in other organizations as well, that science has in itself become its own sort of religion with its own dogmas, with its own doctrines, and its own way of covering its hide so that people don't get figured out. Think about it. What they're saying is happening is that, and by the way, Al Gore was caught for doing this a long time ago as well. Basically, what they're doing is they are writing a scientific article. They are taking it to a friend or somebody else they know has the same vested interests inside the subject material that they are studying and putting forth. And what is happening is that, as they said, these are passing review really quickly. And so they're handing it to somebody who's just going to rubber stamp it, more or less. They're going to say, yeah, that's right. I believe exactly what you're saying. So I'm going to go ahead and put my seal of approval on this so that we can get it published. And apparently this is very common in the peer review world. Hindawi, it says, found 511 articles that it's got to retract in just 16, I think it was 16 journals. And for Sage, it was, let me see here. They give you an actual number. I can't find the number off the top of my head. I think it was like 60 across, 60-page papers they had to retract out of 16 journals. It wasn't quite as bad, or maybe in 14 journals. It wasn't quite as bad with Sage, but with Hindawi, they found an awful lot. And this is not the first time this has been discovered. Like I said, for one, Al Gore was part of one of these things. And I remember also a number of years ago, there's a psychology journal that had to retract, I think it was like 500 articles, like 50% of the articles that they had published in a year because of mishandling of the peer review process. One more note. Well, no, actually, I have a couple more notes in the scientific realm. Today, they found an asteroid. I don't know if it's today, but they found an asteroid, a planet-killer asteroid that may one day hit the planet Earth. I don't have the picture for you, but I highly encourage you to look it up because I found it to be absolutely hilarious. I didn't read anything of the article. All I had to do was see the picture, and literally, the asteroid looks like it has a smiley face, not just any smiley face, like a baby smiley face. It is absolutely glorious. And it reminded me very much of the movie The Fifth Element. You know how they had that sort of planet killer asteroid in the movie that was heading toward Earth that was going to wipe it out, and they had to find the fifth element in order to stop this from colliding with the Earth and obliterating it. It reminded me of that, except for this had like a baby face on it, not like a skull face, which was just wonderful to behold. This is my last thing regarding the scientific realm from this past week. I came across an article, and I love this because this is one of my favorite prehistoric, so-called, I don't really believe in prehistoric, but one of my favorite prehistoric animals ever that I found this on. Do I have it up? I don't know that I have it up. If I don't, I know exactly what it's about. Anyway, the name of the article is, and this is from natureworldnews.com. It says, fossil found in Scottish Highlands sparks speculation about Scotland's national animal. Ready for it? The unicorn. Oh, man, I get so excited about this. I was never that interested in unicorns until recently, because unicorns were kind of girly in my opinion, like this rainbowy sort of horse with the spiral horn on its head. Not exactly a manly picture, even though as mythologized as what they have been. I've never found it so odd that there might have been a species of horse sometime that had a horn on its head. I still don't put that outside the realm of possibility. But Scotland, one of their national animals is the unicorn. And a recent discovery, a fossil that has been uncovered, now adds some light as to why that might be. And what it was that they have discovered is one of my favorite all-time ancient animals, and that is the Siberian unicorn. I can never get its real name right. Let me see if it had Elasmotherium sibericum. Okay, incredible animal. You have to look this one up. It's got this enormous horn on its head, and it's big and it's scary, and it is suspected to be one of the animals that the legends of unicorns may have came from. In fact, one of the things that people like to pick on the Bible about, the King James Version particularly, is that it actually uses the word unicorn. And this article actually cites that, and it reminded me of what it is. Re'em. I think that's how you pronounce it, Re'em. And people think, oh, the Bible talks about unicorns. Well, that discredits it. Unicorn's a mythical creature. Once again, first of all, what's so bizarre about the idea that there may have been a species of horse with a horn on its head? But also, I did some studying, some research on the history of unicorns, and the first ever documentation of unicorns was made in India, and I almost want to say it was by Marco Polo. Probably not Marco Polo, but it was somebody who had traveled to the east, made some observations about the wildlife and things over there. And one of the things that they observed was what they referred to as a unicorn. But when they described it, it actually sounded an awful lot like a species of rhinoceros that lives in India that has only one horn. So very fascinating. So it is suspected that the legend of the unicorn actually comes from rhinoceroses. And this Siberian unicorn, that's what it actually is it's a species, an extinct species of rhinoceros, sometimes called the woolly rhinoceros. And it was an enormous creature. I think it says it was like suspected to be about 3 tons. So big animal, large animal. And its horn is absolutely beautiful. 3.5 tons is what I'm seeing inside the article. And this comes from natureworldnews.com. So I got all that out of the way. I have to get into politics now, because coming up is the not presidential election, but we have the midterm elections coming up in just a week on Tuesday. So I'm recording this on Halloween, October 31st, and so you won't see this until Tuesday, and a week from Tuesday will be the elections on November the 8th. And there's been a lot of talk about them. We have a highly anticipated red wave that is coming. Something that I heard recently is that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that, they have been busy trying to censor people. And I heard that YouTube has temporarily suspended Steven Crowder, even, who has the largest conservative platform on YouTube, particularly the largest conservative podcast, if I'm not mistaken. So they're trying to keep people quiet. One of the things that really irritated me is that I was on Facebook and I came across a post from one of my Facebook friends, and it came up as a sensitive material page. You know what I'm saying? It was covered over with this thing that said sensitive material, click here to view details. And it turned out that all it was a Donald Trump campaign ad. Well, I don't know if that's the technical name of it, but it was a Donald Trump video that was simply stating some facts and stating how things can change. And it's called A Nation in Decline. So I felt very compelled to share this with you because Facebook is trying to censor it. Who knows, they might even pull this video after I play it. But this is Nation in Decline. This is Donald Trump's trailer. Now, kind of comment on it as we are going. Oops, too far there.
We are a nation in decline. We are a failing nation.
So he says we're a nation in decline, we're a failing nation. So it's kind of painting the scene here that it's dark.
We are a nation that has the highest inflation in over 40 years.
It's true, our inflation is...
Where the stock market just finished the worst first half of a year in more than 5 decades.
I don't follow the stock market personally, so I couldn't comment on that.
We're a nation that has the highest energy cost in its history.
Yes, we shut down
and we are no longer energy independent or energy dominant, which we were just 2 short years ago.
We could have been the world's largest exporter of energy.
We are a nation that is begging Venezuela and Saudi Arabia for oil.
I think that Venezuela is doing pretty good these days, right?
We are a nation that surrendered in Afghanistan, leaving behind dead soldiers and American citizens and $85 billion worth of the finest military equipment in the world.
Leaving people out for dead.
We are a nation that allowed Russia to devastate a country, Ukraine, killing hundreds of thousands of people, and it will only get worse.
You didn't move very fast.
We're a nation that has weaponized its law enforcement against the opposing political party like never before. We've never seen anything like this.
FBI
We're a nation that no longer has a
Mar-a-Lago
free and fair press. Fake news is about all you get.
Don't we like fake news?
We're a nation where free speech is no longer allowed.
Facebook,
where crime is rampant like never before, where the economy has been collapsing, where more people died of COVID in 2021 than in 2020.
I don't necessarily buy the COVID numbers, though, by the way. I shouldn't have said
We
that.
are a nation that is allowing Iran to build a massive nuclear weapon and China to use the trillions and trillions of dollars it's taken from the United States to build a military to rival our own.
So these are all facts right here. These aren't
We are
things
a
that he's
nation
making up.
that over the past 2 years is no longer respected or listened to all around the world.
I would
And
say
we are
that.
a nation that is hostile to liberty and freedom and faith. We are a nation whose economy is floundering,
Look at
whose
governors like
stores
Governor
are
Whitmer,
not
former
stocked,
Governor Cuomo.
whose deliveries are not coming, and whose
Senator
educational system is
Gavin
ranked
Newsom.
at the bottom of every list.
Florida, however, number 3.
We are a
In
nation
America?
that in many ways
I'm
has
in
become a
Ohio,
joke. But soon we will have greatness again.
And you see how he turns it around.
It
This
was
is so cool.
hard-working patriots like you who built this country, and it is hard-working patriots like you who are going to save our country.
He's pointing for the
There is no
American
mountain
people
we
to bring
cannot
the change.
climb. There is no
That's
summit
what really
we cannot
resonated with
reach.
people
There is no
throughout his
challenge
campaign,
we cannot
throughout
beat.
his presidency.
There
His
is no
campaign for people.
victory we cannot have. We will not bend. We will not break.
There's absolutely
We will
nothing
not
controversial
yield.
inside
Ever,
of
ever,
this
ever.
ad right
We will
now.
never
It's
give
just-
in. We
it's
will never give up.
straightforward.
And we will never, ever
and
back
true.
down. We will never let you down as long as we are
And
confident
then a
in
mission
you.
statement on top of
The
that.
tyrants we are fighting
He
do
does
not
not want to let us down.
stand even a little chance.
Now, I imagine they
Because
probably
we
don't
are
like the word
Americans,
tyrant,
and
but,
Americans kneel to God and God alone. And it is time to start talking about greatness
I
for
didn't
our
even think
country
about that.
again.
We knew to God and God alone. Oh, my goodness, what was he doing adding that? Man, you want to get yourself killed, Donald Trump, talking about God and God alone? Why would we exclude so many people? You know, I don't even think that my atheist friends would be too offended that he added that in there. You know what people care about? The fact that the economy under Donald Trump was good, that life was pretty good, that jobs were abundant, that employers started competing to pay people higher wages because they wanted the best workers at their businesses, which was, by the way, by design, according to the policies of Donald Trump. Why is this such a controversial ad? Well, I'll tell you why it's so controversial. Because it is true. And that is the most controversial thing amongst mainstream media and social media moderators, by the way, is when you put the truth out there, they're going to want to silence it, because I'm just becoming more and more convinced that they just don't like the truth at all. Well, a couple other things to comment on, because Donald Trump is not running in the midterm elections. And I honestly, to come to think of it, I'm probably not going to really cite a whole bunch of people that are. Dr. Oz, I think we need to cut him a little bit more slack. I don't know too much about his policies and everything, but I hear a lot of similar things being said about him that were said about President Trump. There, people saying that he's left of center and so forth. Is he? Isn't he? I don't know, but he's running as a Republican. I hate it that we're there at that point right now where we say that, well, we have to vote for the Republican regardless of what they believe, regardless of what they think, that we just have to bite the bullet and vote for the Republican. It's absolutely tragic, in my opinion, that we've made it to that point. But here we are, and we have to do it. And quite frankly, I think that Dr. Oz has learned from Donald Trump. I think he's going to be another Donald Trump in some respects. I could be totally wrong on that. That's not an opinion. That's a statement, by the way. But my opinions are correct 100% of the time, and I happen to believe that Dr. Oz could possibly be another Donald Trump, that he campaigns sort of moderately to kind of rally people toward him, and then when he gets elected, that he's going to be a little bit more conservative leaning. Now, in fairness, I know that Trump was probably the most moderate president that we've ever had, but people will never credit him for that. And I don't know if that's unfortunate or not. I don't know. That's kind of one of those things, but I think that nonetheless that he did an awesome job. Something else that I want to bring up is Ted Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz was on The View recently, and it was a marvelous showing on The View that Ted Cruz happened to have, that he went into the belly of the beast And he was just assaulted on all sides, just about everything. I guess that he was advertising a new book that he has put out there now. I don't know what the name of the book is. But from the get-go, you can tell, I mean, and Ted Cruz, he's not stupid. He knew what they were going to do when he was on their show. They were going to come at him full throttle. And the very first thing they do is they say, hey, Ted Cruz, you know, you said a lot of things about Donald Trump that we happen to agree with. You said that he was a horrible person. You said this, you said that. And he called your dad, he said that your dad helped assassinate JFK and that your wife is ugly, which, by the way, we think that she's very beautiful. And so they're trying to butter him up with those sorts of things. And they say, how do you reconcile yourself today with those things you said back then? Let me tell you something. And Ted Cruz did a good job, I thought, at answering the questions. Do I think he could have done better? Yes, but he's a very measured person. He's a world-class debater. He was on the debate team with Harvard, so he's going to follow certain rules. And he knows how the media plays their game, so he's very careful with how he answered those things. But let me tell you what I think regarding how Ted Cruz felt then and how Ted Cruz feels now. Ted Cruz then, I believe he genuinely was disgusted at Donald Trump back then when he was campaigning, because he was not particularly friends with Trump. He was not part of his campaign. And you remember that, and he had a lot of pressure from outsiders as well. I'm not going to mention specific names, but there's a lot of people pushing Ted Cruz to be a little bit more combative with Donald Trump. Was Ted Cruz disgusted with Donald Trump back then? Oh, absolutely. When it came to time when rubber hit the road, though, that he knew that he had to support Trump's policies, and that Donald Trump was saying that he was going to appoint conservative Supreme Court justices, which, by the way, he did. And you might not recall this, and I wish that Cruz would have gone there with this. During the primary campaigns, if you recall, during a debate between, well, I know that Kamala Harris was just one, what'd I call her? Kamala 3-count Harris, that's right, Kamala 3-count Harris and Joe Biden were both on the stage, and Kamala 3-count Harris, made no bones about it that Joe Biden was racist. Made it very clear that she believed that Joe Biden was racist and supported racist policies, which, by the way, he did. And when she was asked about this, well, you said that Joe Biden was racist when you were running against him in the primary. What do you say about that now? And her response was, it was a campaign. It was a debate. You remember that? She just laughed it off, and that's how she sounded. And I'm sorry how obnoxious that sounds, but that is literally what she did. I don't even have to mock it or mimic it. She literally laughed it off and said that it was just a debate. So apparently, by her standards, you're allowed to lie during debates, because she immediately, Ted Cruz, by the way, did not become Donald Trump's vice president. Mike Pence did. Ted Cruz did not want to become Donald Trump's vice president after that hard-fought campaign, because he was still very angry with him. Well, what happened? Well, then you started to see Donald Trump's policies in action, and they were a lot more right-leaning than what everybody was suspecting. So very good things happened there. And then the next thing they hit Cruz with was with January 6th. So how can you, calling yourself a constitutional conservative, stand with Donald Trump and his minions on the whole January 6th thing? And frankly, the route that Ted Cruz handled it was very good, that he took it down the route of all the times that Democrats opposed the results of elections. And he also pointed out, for an entire year, we had riots in the streets where they were burning down buildings, killing police officers, doing lots of harm and destruction, causing fear among the public, and that they actually influenced at least one court case where they condemned an innocent police officer of a serious crime because of fear of the riots that would ensue if they did not condemn this man. So there's an awful lot of baggage inside of those questions that I feel like needed to be addressed. And with the January 6th thing, one thing I maybe it's dangerous to bring this up. I don't know. But let's say that, first of all, there was really, I don't want to say no violence, but there wasn't a lot of violence inside the January 6th protests. And as far as I'm aware, there's only one person I know of that was directly killed as a result of the protest, and it wasn't even by a protester, it was by a police officer, and the police officer shot her, yes, her, and she happened to be a Trump supporter. Did something stupid, by the way, she did something very stupid, but that is the only confirmed kill as a result, a direct result of the January 6th protests. Donald Trump himself told everybody to leave peacefully and quietly and to go home, and wanted them to continue the fight, but not through physical means, but through making their voices heard, which is actually what January 6th was all about. And I wish that this would be addressed more often, that these people truly believed, not because of Donald Trump, but because of their own convictions, that they truly believed that something very strange happened with the 2020 election. And any other time that something like this would happen, yeah, people would protest. Yeah, people would be mad. Do you remember when Roe v. Wade was overturned? Do you remember how they were pounding on the doors at the, at the courthouse, I guess? I don't know where it was exactly. I don't know Washington, D.C. very well, but they're pounding on the doors of the Supreme Court to try to get them to overturn their overturning of Roe v. Wade, even though that's kind of a misstatement. Overturning of Roe v. Wade is kind of not exactly what happened, but it was actually they ruled in a way, in a case that was contrary to the ruling of Roe v. Wade, which set a new precedence. So, I mean, it's not like that the left does not get angry whenever things don't go their way. And not only that, they also have political recourse, trying to pack the Supreme Court and trying to change voting laws so they are federalized. So they have lots of ways they're trying to change things to make it so that their opposition can never get in control ever again. Which, if you're one of those protesters on January 6th, you already know that this is one of their aims. You already hear them talking about this. And not only that, you see an election where the former president now was ahead 700,000 votes on election night in Pennsylvania. And for one, the state was not called for him. And two, they were calling it the other direction before the votes were even counted. The votes that put him over the top were even counted. They were already phoning it in for Joe Biden when he was down by 700,000 votes. I think it was like a 90%. It was something along the lines of like a 90% of precincts reporting at that point. So when you see something like that happen, you see all the other shenanigans that happened on election night, particularly between the hours of, I think, 3 and 4 in the morning, yeah, you'd be a little bit upset. And yeah, you'd want to make your voice heard. And you should make your voice heard under those circumstances. That's what we are even encouraged to do. That's what Democrats encourage their constituents to do, is to make their voices heard. So I don't fully understand. I do, but I don't fully understand why it is in a legal sense that certain people can be put away without trial, without bail, because they participated in this peaceful protest because of stupid things they may have said or stupid things they may have done, when they don't even come close to comparing to the riots and destruction and death that was caused by the riots that happened this past year, where people had their bail paid for by Kamala Harris and other people that were starting these GoFundMe pages to release these criminals. So these are very trying times right now. And when it comes to the elections coming up on Tuesday, November the 8th, I highly encourage you to go out there if you're informed about who you're voting for. But even, you know what, even if you're not informed at this stage, let me make it very clear for you. The Democrats are not your friends. At this stage in history, they do not want to do good for you. If they win, gas prices will skyrocket way back up because they got their way. So they don't need you anymore. I don't know exactly what else will happen. I know that's a big one. The economy will continue to fall apart one way or another. Basically, if gas prices go up, that's all there is to it. All other aspects of the American economy is going to fall apart from right there. And am I scared of it? No, because I trust in God. I trust in Jesus Christ. I know that at the end of the day, that they're in control of all things. We will be tested. We will be tried. And in fact, we'll be tested and tried even if there is this massive red wave where things go the way of the Republicans and we win the House and we win the Senate. And essentially, we just absolutely flood the zone and overwhelm our opposition party. So just have faith going into this election season. Know that we need to just go out. We need to vote. Republicans, go out and vote. Democrats, go out and vote Republican. If you're undecided, go out and vote Republican, no matter who the candidate is. I don't care if it's Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, or, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, for crying out loud. I know he's not running right now, but even if there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, vote for Arnold Schwarzenegger because it's better than anything else that the Democrats have to offer. At this point, they don't want to do the country good, and they have a totally different agenda that is un-American, that is anti-constitutional, and I'm not even going to make any bones about it. It's just the truth. That's all there is to it. So thank you once again for joining me for the Bill Seng Podcast. I know this sounded like a very slanted podcast today, and yes, it was. I am a very biased, a very opinionated person when it comes to politics and worldview and all that. I want to see a Christian worldview agenda being pushed opposed to a secular, and man, that's almost even insulting to the atheist to call it a secular agenda. This is just insane agenda being pushed by the other side take effect and be pushed upon the American people, which will inevitably lead to widespread suffering. So this is the Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng. I would like you to go on to Rumble, to go on to YouTube, to go on to either iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts or Buzzsprout, wherever you can find this podcast posted, and like it, share it, subscribe to it, hit the notification bell, give it 5-star reviews, whatever you got to do. Make this podcast known to your friends, share it with your friends and family members. And again, this is the Bill Seng Podcast. My name is Bill Seng. Don't be fooled. I am not Scooby-Doo. You have a great day.